And good morning. I'm so sorry for the little bit of a delay. I was on campus and the internet wasn't working very well, so I thought I would head home and see if it was any better, and it is. So I'm glad I did. But I'm sorry for the little bit of a late start. But thank you so much for all of you who are on here with me. There's a bunch of you logging in and getting your names in the chat. So thank you so much. Can you all hear me and see me okay on your end? Is everything coming through just fine? If someone could let me know in the chat, that would be super helpful, just so I can make sure before we get going. Okay, perfect. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. Hard to believe it, but we are in week number 2 already. So I want to take a little bit of time today to talk about what's going on for this week, especially our first exam, which I'll spend some time going over where to take it, how to take it, and some tips for studying. And then just some reminders, of course. I'll see if you have any questions for me, and that will be our plan for the day. I am at home, so I'm sorry in advance if we get some cats that decide to join us in our stream, though that's always, I always think that's fun more than anything. But let's go ahead and go over to Canvas together, and we can take a look. So we are, as I said, in week number 2. So remember that everything operates in 2-week chunks. So we are in weeks 1 and 2 right now, and everything from weeks 1 and 2 is due by this Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. So if you haven't started on week number 1, make sure you get going on all of that. If you have, fantastic. I'm going to focus on the content for week number 2, since last week we talked about things for week number 1. And of course, I will give you the extra credit question for joining me today, and I'll give that to you in a little bit. But let's go ahead and click on week number 2 and take a look at what we have going on this week. Last week, we were focusing on the history and scope, and then chapter 2, psychology is a science. And then, of course, we had discussions 1 and 2. So I'm gonna move on from those, assuming that you've done them or will do them shortly. This week, we're covering chapter 3 and chapter 4. So we're looking at biological psychology and then sensation and perception. You have 2 discussions, as always, but then we also have our very first exam this week, which we'll spend some time talking about. So as usual, for the 2 chapters that you have to cover, I would really recommend on the ebook site that you read those chapters first. So if you click on chapters, you can find chapters 3 and 4 right here. After you've read the chapters, then you'll probably want to go through the lecture and then watch the lecture video, and make sure you're doing this for both chapter 3 and 4. As usual, the lectures are in like a 5-tab format. You'll see that every single time. First page is objectives and summary, a little quick description of what you can expect, and a summary of the chapter, and you can listen to it or read it. The second page, as always, will be beyond the book, and I have some kind of helpful tutorials that might be useful for you here. One of them is on the 3 different types of neurons, one on action potentials, a little bit about studying the brain, and then some stuff about the 10% myth, which might be helpful for your discussion this week. The third page is in pop culture, a little clip from the Walking Dead way back in season 1, where they go to the CDC. I've been watching The Last of Us, so kind of a zombie-esque, except fungus related, a little different. But a little clip from The Walking Dead, and then a little one here from Animaniacs, which covers the parts of the brain, and then a little bit about the ice bucket challenge. On the 4th page, we have all of the key terms that you need for this chapter for the exam. And then finally, on the last page, a little bit about application, understanding spinal cord injury, the importance of experiences, and so on. And as I've mentioned before, if I give you a video in here, make sure you watch it, click on all the links, explore all of the content. Everything together will hopefully give you a really good picture and understanding of the materials. So make sure that you click on and explore and watch everything I give you. You'll of course also want to watch the lecture video where I'm lecturing to the slides. And then make sure you do the same thing for chapter 4, right? Read through the lecture, watch the lecture video, and so on. So remember, always 3 things for each chapter: the reading in the book, the reading of the lecture, and then the lecture video. You also have 2 discussions this week, and these are based on chapters 3 and 4. So let's take a look at those a little bit together before we spend some time talking about the exam. As always, with the discussions, you'll have these little instructions at the top. As always, make sure you watch my little brief introduction video Think about these as mini papers. I'm looking for like a paragraph or so, really elaborating in your responses, showing off your knowledge and comprehension. Don't forget to also read through a minimum of 5 of your classmates' responses, reply to each one of them, or to one of them, sorry. Your discussion in total is worth 15 points, 13 for your responses to my questions, and then 2 for your response to a peer. So watch my little video. This one here, number 3, is about biological psychology. So you're going to write a little bit about what are neurons and why are they important. You're going to reference the specific chain of events and processes involved and how neurons communicate with each other. So I'd like you to describe to me how they communicate. I will give you a heads up that this is where people tend to lose points. Really show off that you understand the whole process of electrochemical communication, and that is what I'm really looking for you to describe. And then finally, you'll read the short article about the 10% myth of the brain and answer these 2 questions about it. What are the origins of the myth? And give me 2 reasons that we know that the myth isn't true, that it's false. So when you're ready, you'll hit reply, like some of you have already done. And then don't forget to also reply to a classmate to get those kind of easy 2 points for each discussion. You also have one more discussion number 4. You'll do 2 every week. So discussion number 4 is related to sensation and perception. Same format, right? I try very hard to be consistent for you. So here you have a little video. Make sure you watch that. Again, mini papers, elaborate, show off your knowledge. This one you're reading a short article about smell and memory. And then you're going to do a little memory experiment. I want you to gather a small sample of some items that are just around your house or around your home. I gave you some suggestions, but some things that you're going to then close your eyes with each of them and smell them. I want you to fully experience that smell, clear your mind, try and take your time rather than rushing through it. And then what you're going to write about for your discussion is, did you experience any intense memories or associations? What did you respond to the most or the least? Anything else that you would suggest to try? We have smell memories, and that's what you're going to be reading about in the articles. And sometimes a specific smell will remind us of a very specific memory, or it might just be associations that we have, and that's what you're going to be reflecting on. Number 2, I want you to tell me what are smell memories and why do they occur. You can find the answer to this in the article or also in the reading for the week, but really be specific. Again, show off your knowledge, really describe how they occur, what they are. And then number 3, how could you maybe use this knowledge in your personal life in some way? What are some practical applications? And I definitely touched on that in the lecture that hopefully you will read through, and also in the textbook. So don't forget to do those 2 discussions, read those chapters, do all those things as normal. The other thing that we have this week is exam number 1. So every second week you will take an exam. And so I want to take a little bit of time to talk about that, give you some tips for being successful, and of course, see if you have any questions. And if at any point you do, feel free to put them in the chat. The exams are on the ebook site. So if you click on this link right here, it's going to remind you that you can take this on the ebook. Hopefully you've kind of bookmarked the ebook at this point. So let's go ahead and go over to that. If you're on this page up here at the top, if you click on exams, that is going to take you to the exams. And this is where you took that mandatory orientation quiz, same style and format of test. So you can see that quiz here at the top, and then we're going to scroll down and you can see here are the instructions for exams 1 through 4. And let's talk about these for a minute just to make sure that we're all on the same page and clear. So for your exam, you have 75 minutes to complete the test. And this is the exact amount of time that you would have had you taken this with me in person. It is plenty of time as long as you are prepared and you've studied and you're familiar with the content. You only get 1 attempt at the exam, so be ready and organized before you begin. What I mean by that is make sure that you have a good internet connection. Make sure that you have 75 minutes to take the test. Make sure that you have a quiet place to take it. And by organized, make sure that you've studied, you've prepared, you've reviewed the study guide, and you know all of the terms on it. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. You're welcome to use your notes. You're welcome to use your book. You're welcome to use anything at your disposal during the exam. But I promise you, that if you're trying to look up every question and every answer, you're going to run out of time. So, really important that you do study and review like you would for a normal in person test. That's going to be important. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself really, really short on time. If you're trying to understand the question and then find the right term and you're searching through your lecture notes and the book and all these things, it's going to hurt you time wise. So, make sure that you have studied and prepared. And I'll talk about that a little more with the study guide in a few minutes. You also need to make sure that you save your answers. Remember, just like with the mandatory orientation quiz, you want to make sure they all turn that like orange color and that they're all saved, or it will not record your response. Also, be sure to be mindful of the time. There will be a little clock that appears and it will stop you when the time expires. So just make sure that you are aware of it. You're welcome to skip questions. If you don't know the answer, skip it and come back to it. You don't want to spend too much time on something and run out of time. So just be really mindful of your time. And when you're all done, you'll click I am finished and you'll get a score right away. So you'll know your score on the exam as soon as you're done with it. I want to point out that it does not come over to Canvas automatically, just like the last one you took. So just remember that if you don't have a score in Canvas, but you did take it, I will be bringing all the scores over as soon as the deadline has passed. Usually on Mondays, I'll do all the grading, and then you'll be able to see your score in Canvas. So if I go up here, remember with the mandatory orientation quiz, let me just show you one more time here, that when you click begin, so here's that little clock, right? It'll tell you your time limit and it keeps track of your time. And then here are the list of questions. Now, there are obviously much more for the exam than this. There's like close to 75 questions or so on the exam. But you can see here that they're all black, right? So the best way to contact your instructor is through email, true, and then you have to save your answer. And that turns it that gold color. If I don't know the answer to this, I can skip ahead, right? So here is your chance to do that, right? And so make sure that they're all that gold kind of orange color, and then you can hit save. And when you're done, you'll hit I am finished and submit for a grade. And that will allow you to then submit it. You'll get your score right away. A shameful 1 out of 10 for me. But this is what you'll be doing for the exam. And then again, this grade does not come over to Canvas, but I will be bringing it over on Monday after the time has passed. Okay. So are there any questions about that for the moment? I'm going to talk more about the study guide, but I just wanted to see so far, are there any questions at all? Okay, let's see. All right, I'm just waiting just a minute here. Right. I don't see anything yet, but if you do think of any questions, of course, feel free to put them in the chat. A couple other notes here. I will never trick you on an exam, ever, right? Everything should be very clear and straightforward. If it doesn't seem clear, make sure that you do reread it. Everything should be very straightforward if you've studied and prepared. And I have given you a study guide to help you with that. So I'm going to go through that here in a moment. Okay, hold on 1 minute here. Sorry, give me 1 second here. For some reason, my camera isn't working. Give me just like a minute to fix this. Sorry, I've almost got it. Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. For some reason, my camera, like I clicked it off and then it wouldn't go back on. So I wanted to go over the study guide here with you. So here's the study guide right underneath. So here's exam number 1 and here's the study guide. And so what I do is I make the exam and then I go through and give you all of the terms that you need to know from the exam. So this is basically the exam without the questions, right? And so this exam is on chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4, everything from the first 2 weeks. And if it's on here, you need to know it for the test. If it's not on here, then you can completely let it go. You don't need to study it or worry about it. So make sure that you know all of these terms from chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and chapter 4. I also gave you 2 diagrams that you can expect to see on the exam. So make sure that you are familiar with and could label those. But what I would do if it were me, and I am a straight A student who always does maybe a little bit too much, but since this is the first exam and you might not know what to expect, I would over prepare. I would really recommend that you over prepare for the first exam. You can always dial it back for the next one, but you never want to have that moment like partway into a test where you're like, I should have done more and I'm not going to do well. And then the anxiety builds. So if it were me, what I would do is I would go through and type or write out every term on this study guide and have it in front of me during the exam. What that will do is make sure that you have everything that's going to be on there. Because what you don't want to happen is like to get to one of these questions, here and then have it where you're like, I don't know the answer. I don't know where to find it. And that would be a huge issue for you, right? So what you want is to make sure that you're studying and prepared. If you have all these terms in front of you, you can very easily reference it. And I think that's going to make your life easier. It's going to make you more successful. And again, if it turns out to be more work than you needed to do, you could dial it back. But if it's on here, it will be on the test. And that obviously is going to be something that hopefully will help you to be very successful. Okay, so make sure that you study and prepare everything on here, know everything on here, know the diagrams. Again, set yourself up for success. Don't wait until Sunday night to take the exam. Inevitably, the internet will go out, the computer will crash, something will happen. Try and take it earlier in the week. Make sure that you have the opportunity to be successful. And then, again, there will be no trick questions as long as you study and prepare. You should be in great shape. I would love it if every single one of you got an A. It would make me so happy. And honestly, I think that my tests online are very straightforward and clear. As long as you're doing the work and you're studying, you should be in fantastic shape. There's really no reason that you shouldn't do quite well on that first exam. So are there any questions at all about what to expect? The exam's mostly multiple choice. There's also some matching and some true-false questions. That's the main format. So as long as you kind of keep that in mind when you're studying, you should be in good shape. Anything that I can answer? I know exams cause a lot of anxiety. Any questions at all for now? I'll wait just a minute to see if you have any questions for me. Right. How many questions? I believe that it has 75 questions. So it's basically about a minute per question that you can expect. Right. So yeah, 75 questions. So it's 1 minute about per question. So if you don't know the answer, again, skip it, keep going. The true false question should be really quick. But yeah, about 75 questions. And you can expect that on all of the exams, right about that number. Yes, and I'll give you extra credit, the Twitch extra credit number 2 question in just a couple of minutes. And then you will be able to answer that. I'll show you where to answer that as well. Okay. So a couple of reminders for you while I'm waiting to see if you have any other questions. If you have not already, make sure you get going on week number 1. All of the materials for week 1 and week 2 are due by this Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. And remember, please remember, I don't accept things past the deadline. Okay, so if something comes up, if you have an emergency, if you have something happen, you have to reach out to me before the deadline in order for me to give you any possibility of an extension. If you email me even at 12:01 a.m. Monday morning, it will be too late. That is my one hard rule. I'm willing to work with you as long as you reach out before the deadline. So just please keep that in mind. Everything will be graded on Monday. Okay, so our deadline is Sunday night, and then traditionally on Mondays in the evening, I will grade everything. I'll grade all your discussions for the first 2 weeks. I'll bring your exam scores over, and then I traditionally send out an email with some kind of general feedback. And then in our Twitch live stream next week, I'll go over some things that I noticed for the first 2 weeks and talk about that feedback a little more. So you can always expect that everything will be graded after the deadline on that Monday, traditionally in the evening. Okay. So let me post these couple of reminders. So the first one is, please, as always, make sure to check your subscription status. I saw, is it Kelly Bean? Right. Thank you for figuring that out. That's fantastic. If you haven't subscribed for free yet, I would really appreciate if you could do that. About 18 of you are subscribed, and there's about 90 something of you in total. So it would definitely help me and save some time if you could try and figure that out. Remember that the instructions for that are on our webpage. There's a whole page dedicated to how to do that. And then as we hit the month mark, it's only good for 30 days. So you have to renew it. I'll remind you when we get a little closer. Your other reminder, just as usual, our next Twitch live stream will be on Wednesday, March 22nd at 11:30 a.m. As usual, so just to put that in the chat, sorry that we were a few minutes late today. I wanted to make sure we had a good connection, and it wasn't so great at school, maybe because of the rain or whatnot. And then the only other thing I have for you today, kind of keeping it short and sweet, is your extra credit question. So let me put that here in the chat. I did type it out for myself ahead of time to make my life easier. So this is the week number 2 Twitch extra credit question. I'm putting it in the chat, and then I'll show you how to answer it. So what is meant by electrochemical communication? Describe both the electrical piece and the chemical piece of how neurons communicate with each other. And this should be something that's really helpful for you in scaffolding up toward that discussion number 3 for this week, where we're talking about how neurons communicate. So you can kind of use that to help you with that as well. So what is meant by electrochemical communication? Describe both pieces of how neurons communicate with each other. And when you're ready, you'll go back to Canvas, click on optional Twitch extra credit number 2, since we are in week number 2. Okay. And then up here at the top, you can click on Start Assignment. And it's going to bring up this text box where you can type your response. Okay, and that's going to allow you to then hit submit, and you get the little confetti burst and sometimes other things, flowers in there as well for spring, very appropriate. So make sure that you do this before Sunday night. It's due by Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. And that is worth up to 2 points. So you're going to need to either put your name in the chat, which several of you have done, or if you are subscribed, then you don't need to worry about that. If you are watching this later, you can still get the points for doing this. If you are subscribed on Twitch, I can record your attendance and participation. So another reason to kind of try and figure that out if you can. But again, for now, we are in the middle of week number 2. So biggest thing, if you haven't already, do week number 1. And then get going on the week number 2 materials. Don't forget to study and prepare and set yourself up for success with the exam. If you have any questions throughout the week, you're welcome to reach out. Please be really mindful of the deadline of Sunday night. Everything is due by then, and I don't accept anything beyond the deadline. And then I will hang out for a little bit if any of you do have any questions. I was trying to be really mindful of your time since we started late, so sorry to go a little quickly. But if you have any questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat. Otherwise, get going on the materials for this week. Good luck on the exam. I hope you all do really well. We sadly didn't have any cats join us today. I heard them, but it's like they know that I'm going to scoop them up if they come close, so they stayed they stayed far away. But if they ever come close, I will grab them and share them with you, of course. But I'll hang out for a little bit if any of you do have any questions for me. Otherwise, good luck. Have a wonderful week. Enjoy the tail end of this weather. I know, I need the kitties too. I'm like, where did they go? Right? They're hiding from me somewhere. I don't see, I'm like looking around. Cats! Nope, no luck. Maybe if I pull out the catnip, they'll come running, right? Anything for a little bit of catnip. But anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Take care of yourselves, hang in there. And if you think of any questions, feel free to put them in the chat now. Or of course, you can reach out to me by email during the week. Okay, so I'm going to minimize my video so I'm not staring at myself, but thank you for all of you who joined me live. I really appreciate it, and I love the opportunity to interact with you. I will see you all next week. Yes, thank you as well. I'm going to minimize this, but again, I'll hang out for a little while if you do have any questions for me. Yeah, so structuralism and functionalism, you can find those in the book, right? So if you go to, let's go back to the ebook together. That's in chapter 1. So let's get there. And if you click on chapter 1, History and Scope of Psychology, it's kind of really close to the beginning here, right? So we have Gestalt psychology and then humanistic psychology, right? And we have functionalism and structuralism. So structuralism, right? Reducing normal conscious experience into basic elements. So consciousness is like an accumulation of all your experiences throughout your life. And that was William James's I'm sorry, not William James. That was one perspective. And then William James proposed another one called functionalism, where we're looking at the capability of the mind, right? So from a functionalist approach, our mental life, all of our behavior is kind of considered in terms of like actively adapting to the environment around us, right? So from a functionalist approach, like everything is that active adaptation. Our brain is inherently neutral, but produces different behaviors depending on the different signals that it receives. So that's kind of, just know the basic difference between them. They just kind of approach things in a slightly different way. One of them looking at the elements and one of them looking at it a little bit differently. Of course. And I am still here. If any of you have any other questions, I'll hang out for a couple more minutes. All right, everyone, it looks like almost everyone has logged off, so I'm going to go ahead and close this up so I can upload it and download it and all that fun stuff. If you think of any other questions, feel free to email me. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you all next Wednesday.